everybody.
Welcome to Elements of the Soul. This is our new YouTube channel. We're extremely excited to get this going
Very
and started
excited.
for you guys.
And I'm very red and out of breath because I was coughing and it was a long journey from the camera to here. And
Yeah, we're obviously just learning. So we wanted to do a video today of awakening symptoms. We have just been through so much with our awakening, our ascension, and now our shamanic initiation that we thought we would go back in time and try to recap what our first awakening was like. My
Bless
puppy
you.
is sneezing. And bring you guys up to date. So we'll do awakening symptoms video today. Tomorrow we'll do ascension symptoms. And then after that we'll do shamanic initiation, what we've been through just this past year, and bring you guys kind of up to speed with the process. They seem so similar: awakening, ascension, Kundalini awakening, and any kind of initiation. They all kind of have very similar symptoms and experiences that sort of appear to be like the other. But as you go on, you'll see that awakening and ascension is more traumatic, if you will, and more blissful and devastating and all of that good stuff than awakening. And then initiation is even more intense.
well, give
than
that scenario
ascension.
you just gave, because you
Which one?
just when we were talking about it, you just gave a very concise. When,
I
you know
don't know
what I
what
mean?
I said.
The awakening brings you to one point, and the
Yes.
ascension takes over. And
Yes, so it's a phases, right? It's phases, just like the moon has phases, the earth has phases, we as humans have phases. And so we all start out with our awakening. So if you're watching this video, you have at least been through a spiritual awakening, or you would not have been drawn to this video. So you usually start out with an awakening of some sort, an initial awakening into the truth of who you are, the truth of the world. And then once you have incorporated that into your system and integrated that into your energy body, then the ascension process begins. And then once you've gone through a series of ascension symptoms that have your vibration has lifted to a point to where now your physical body is trained to match that vibration, that's ascension, right? Then you begin an initiation process of some sort. Maybe not for everybody, but most people that are on a spiritual quest or spiritual journey, especially in this day and age, creating the new earth, are going through some form of initiation process. So you can really surpass all of those if you've had a near-death experience, or you've had a traumatic situation, or your Kundalini somehow spikes
which in
on
itself
you.
is an initiation. It's
Which
just
in
a-
itself is
yeah.
an initiation. However, the average person goes through an actual phase process. So we're going to get into the actual awakening process. We've just picked 5 symptoms, if you will, that we feel were the most predominant in our experience. We'll never share with you anything that we haven't personally been through ourselves. And so we picked out the top 5 that we feel were the most valuable, I guess, for you guys.
Yeah,
Right?
and within these 5 sort of categories, I guess there are more. There's all kinds of different symptoms that
Yeah.
would kind of help go
within
over a little
each
bit.
within
Within
each
each little-
symptom.
Yeah.
Right, there's layers, right? So the first one we want to go over is internal chaos. So can you
And
explain that?
yeah, well, internal chaos is. I mean, there's a lot of ways to explain it, but since this is YouTube, we're not cussing. We can't really give the
The actual description is your life is totally beep.
really what happens at this point is that you experience and understand all of these symptoms. These are all holistic symptoms. We're talking mind, body, and soul. So you are
Yes.
experiencing chaos within the mind, within the body, and within the soul, because what's happening is that you are all of a sudden realizing so many things that were your truths, were your belief systems, how you lived your life every single day.
Yeah.
They're wrong, and you're beginning to understand.
They're wrong.
Wrong
Or
meaning
you're waking up from the illusion.
right, and really it's that you are discovering who you really are and how you really want to see the world and how you see the world, as opposed to through the lens that you've created however how many years. That's how you see the world. You all of a sudden you kind of peek out from behind that and begin to see the world for what it actually is, and see yourself for who you actually are.
Right.
And once that begins to happen,
For your personal truth, right?
For
we want to
your
be
personal truth,
really
exactly.
careful about that, because everyone's spiritual awakening and everyone's life is going to be a totally different experience based on their perception, based on their soul growth, based on their soul contract, and what they did in fact come here to learn and evolve from, transcend from, ascend from.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone's story is going to be a little unique, obviously, but there is definitely bases that people
some
go
will be
through.
vastly different, and some will be almost identical, and everything in between.
Yeah.
There is no real standard,
Mm-hmm.
But as the more you get to talk to people, the more you begin to understand this stuff, the more you will see those dots that can get connected.
Yeah.
Um,
So the internal chaos is when you wake up from the illusion of the programming that you've been, that's been instilled in you since you were day one, right? You were given a name, you were given an identity, you were given a religion, chances are. You were given even a social security number, and all of those things, right? A name, a first name, a last name, a religion, a family, a culture, a belief system, whatever. You're also adopting habits and karma and those types of things from the people that you lived with and you were raised with, that you trusted and believed in, and that were raising you and taking care of you.
Yeah, so I think one of the big things that are within this first symptom is a lot of people look at their family and they begin to really, really hate them.
Yeah.
And really resent them for what they did or how they did. But something really important to understand that you get to a point where you understand that all these programmings Courtney was just talking about, all these things that you were given, they're survival tools.
Yeah.
This is how your family and the people around you, your family unit, this is how they best learn to survive. And so they pass these things on to you. Sometimes they're racial biases. Sometimes they're things that you think, why would they do that to me? Why would they make me feel that way? It's survival. And that's really what we're talking about, is that all these survival tools that you were given, that you were told this is how you get along in the world, all of a sudden you start to develop different tools and you start to realize these ones I have, they just don't work
And
anymore.
acknowledging that what your parents passed on to you was passed on to them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are watching this video, chances are you're the person in your family that is changing the paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
You have been the chosen one to change and break these patterns and these programs to create the new earth, to stop it in its tracks and reestablish a new way of living, a new belief system, a better and healthier, more unified Christ consciousness belief system. You've been chosen for that. So it's a pretty big deal.
Right. So, so you just imagine how that would feel if kind of everything that you thought that you knew over the past, what would be 20 years sometimes, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is, that you thought is completely different. The exact opposite of some in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So that creates amazing, intense internal chaos. It truly does.
Oh my gosh, it was so difficult for us to go through that, especially raising children, having older children and younger children, and sort of like right in the middle of that, stopping that and switching gears and going, whoa, we've been doing this wrong this whole time, or wrong, right? We've been doing this a certain way, and now we see the light. We understand there's a different way to live. This way isn't working for us anymore, and sort of putting the brakes on our old life and starting a new life. It creates this internal chaos. It creates this anger inside you and fear, and you distrust in the world around you.
Yeah, and that really, part of this process is understanding that what you've been doing for all these years just isn't working, like Courtney said. You get to that point where you finally realize, you know what? All this chaos it's coming into my life, all these ways I've been thinking and living my life, they just don't work. And you get to a point where you say, something's got to change. Most of the time, you don't know what that is. And that's the hardest part about it, is because, as we know, the old saying, nature abhors a vacuum. If you're going to take something away, you have to replace it with something.
Absolutely.
So you have all of this list of things that you don't want anymore, but you have nothing to replace them with. That's where really that chaos
really, it's like a frenzy right inside of you, that you are just so confused and overwhelmed with. I know one of the things that I experienced during that phase was guilt. I had a tremendous amount of guilt. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Of like, oh, I totally screwed my kids up, and I instilled all these programs in them, and I did all of these things that I now don't believe in. And I know that I experienced that guilt and that shame of like, okay, now I know the truth and I get to live this really abundant, beautiful life, but do I deserve to?
Right.
And it was really hard for me to understand it and see it from a bird's eye view, that this all was interconnected and it all had to happen the way that it happened, and that my children were on their own little soul path as well. And so I can't necessarily take credit for the bad things I did nor the good things that I did. They were their own little souls having their own little experience in this. And so I know that that was one of, I would put under the category of internal chaos, is guilt and shame of, wow, I've been living this way for so long and doing these horrible things and judging myself and going through that horrible internal chaos of just judgment, guilt, shame. You know, it's
Right.
emotional because it really is an emotional time when you start to realize that the things that you've been doing weren't in the best interest of yourself. You weren't demonstrating that self-love, and that
Right.
can come in many forms.
Right, and that kind of brings you into the next phase of it. That's where, because you
Definitely.
begin to look for answers.
So if you're in this phase, if you're watching this video and you're in that phase where you're first starting to wake up, there's hope, because the next phase is soul hunger. And soul hunger is when you're researching these feelings that you're having, and you're examining your old belief system versus what you choose to believe now, and you go on this sort of like this what am I trying to say? It's quest.
Journey.
Yeah, it's very juicy, it's very delicious, and you're looking for answers. You want to understand why you're feeling this way. I know for Denny and I, it was a twin flame thing, and so we were like, why are we so intense together? How are we this in love with each other? And how do I know what you're thinking all the time without you saying anything? And how are we communicating telepathically? Like, all of these weird things were happening between Denny and I that we had no answers for. Like, it was completely just
Right.
lovely, but
Like,
just
why are you
crazy at the
pulling
same
my
time.
soul out of my being
Right.
and like exposing
Stepping on it and then
and feeling
Yeah.
things that
Mm-hmm.
I've never in my life felt before.
Mm-hmm.
So we started looking for answers, and this is
Soul
where
hunger. That's the best way to explain it.
this is where you begin to research things. You start to find your tribe, find your people who have like-minded views and
Yes.
are going through the same thing, who have been through it. A lot of the time, this is where you start finding people who you think, this person is weird, but give it a little
But
more
there's
time,
something
and
I
all of a
really
sudden
like
you're best
about
friends
it.
because
Because they get you, they
Yeah.
feel you, they understand what you're going through. Yes. And so soul hunger is a huge next step after you get through that internal chaos. And that doesn't mean the internal chaos does not bleed into the hunger, because it definitely does.
yes, it's
However,
funny. Yeah, what happens?
they do.
go
They
ahead.
sort of like ombre
They do,
into
they
the
do.
next,
But what's funny is that at this point, you are still doing a bunch of the old stuff that you were doing
you're
because
still
you don't know any
trapped in the
different.
behaviors.
Yeah, for
It-
us
yes.
personally,
Oh my gosh.
when we first started to awaken, when we were doing heavy drinking, and we were doing a lot of things to sort of numb this pain, to
Yeah.
self-medicate, and we continued that while we were doing our searching,
Yeah.
because there was nothing else to do. And a lot of it's not only bad habits, but it's also behaviors,
Yeah.
thought patterns, emotional patterns, all these things. You're still
Yes,
doing
so
it
much still doing
while
it.
you're looking for these answers, because
Yes.
you're looking for something to replace it
So
with,
if you're
essentially.
still in those same old bad paradigm patterns, those old habits that you're trying to shake, you're totally normal. You're exactly where you need to be. Continue to do that soul hunger. Continue to go after those cravings for life. Research, read what you need to read, get tons of books, study the things that appeal to you. And the one thing that I would suggest, that if you have a desire for it or an inspiration comes to you and you're like, I want to look into numerology, or I want to get into oracle readings, or I want to learn witchcraft, or I want to meditate more, whatever comes to you, know that that is your higher self beginning. You're beginning to merge with your higher self. You're beginning to understand that there's more to this life, and there's another way to connect to it other than television and food and drugs and alcohol and sex and gambling and partying. You're beginning to understand that you can actually reach that ecstasy that you've been trying to seek out in the world through just merging with your higher self. So know that you're going to still have those patterns. You're still going to be, going through the process. But what you're hungering for is what your higher self is really drawing you. It's leading you to where it needs to go. So always trust those feelings, research them, take what you want out of the information that you find that resonates with you, and leave the rest and move on. Don't get too caught up on needing to know everything about a particular subject. Allow your soul to soar through this time. That's one thing that we didn't do. We felt we had to know everything about this one topic and just pound all this information in our head, and it was like overload. And now going back, if we could, we would go with the flow a little bit more and allow our souls to do the communicating for us, allow our higher self to merge us into the next phase with a smoother transition, knowing that this is all I need to know about numerology, so it's time to move on, or this is all I need to know about meditation, and just move on, because where you are now and where you'll be in 5 years are going to be vastly different, and you're really only going to take with you the knowledge that you need anyways.
Always. And you won't forget the stuff that you need to remember.
You won't. You'll take it with you.
And it's also important to understand at this phase that, our whole lives, we were taught that here's your little box, get inside of it, and do all the things that come along with being inside this little box. Yeah. So when we start to crawl out of this box, we start to look for a new box to crawl into. Mm-hmm. Eventually, we realize that you can't put yourself in a box. And so you're making all these great soul discoveries and all these different things. All these different mediums that you're using, or modalities that you're using, and you're trying to put it into a box. So that gets to be very difficult because there is no mold. It's okay. It's okay if this person is doing something you're not doing. It's okay that they look a little bit different than you, or you don't feel what they're saying you should feel, or whatever it might be, because you're having your own experience. You're creating your own realities.
And everything is right.
Right.
Everything is right.
So don't worry about the box. You don't need the box.
You have left your box, and now you have entered into infinite wisdom. You've entered into infinite amounts of possibilities at your disposal. So don't try to box yourself in. Allow your soul to just be free and hunger for what it needs, and let the progression, trust the process. Let the progression naturally unfold.
Because where does that lead you next? Next you go into
external conflict with others. And this is a big one, because now you've had this internal conflict with yourself. You have now accepted yourself and realized that you've had a spiritual awakening, and you've been validated by your soul hunger. Your soul hunger has validated you in saying, yes, you had a spiritual awakening. There are like-minded people. There are other people that are going through the same experience as you. You are starting to find new interests, and you're feeling different. The energies are starting to integrate within you. Your vibration is raising a little. And then bam, there's this whole outside world that is not on the same page as you. This is friends, family, your spouse, your children, your neighbor, your landlord, your business partners. They all stayed the same, and you changed. And there's going to be a lot of people that don't understand the process that you're going through. They're going to think you're going crazy. They might think you've gone woo-woo and you're weird, and all of a sudden Courtney's into all these weird things. It shakes up their paradigm, right? It shakes up their solid ground. They want you to stay the same, because if you're changing, then what does that say for them? Especially friends and family. Friends and family are the biggest external conflict that you're going to have, because they need you to be the same old person that you were. They need you to do that, because you're mirroring to them what they need to change, and they're not willing to change.
Yeah, because these are the people who taught you, who gave you these survival tools to begin with, and now they see you not using those tools anymore, and they're
it's a
freaking
direct
out.
Threat.
And they're saying, you're supposed to do it this way. This is the way it's supposed to be done. And you're just, maybe you don't have all the answers yet, but you're saying, I just know there's something different. I just know there is. And so that causes conflict.
Yes.
And on the flip side of the coin, though, you also find that you strengthen some relationships. People begin
You're setting an example.
You begin to shed people, but you also begin to gain more and strengthen a lot of relationships with them. That's what happened to Courtney and I, is that when we finally, began to understand this stuff, our relationship got to a level that we didn't think you could get to, because we started off at such a high level to begin with, but then all of a sudden it got elevated again.
Yeah.
Because of this awakening, because of the soul journey that we took, and the research we did, the people we met, and then, and our family started falling away. Slowly but surely, they started peeling one by one. And
so trust the process. The ones that are supposed to stay in your life will. The ones that are not supposed to stay in your life, this is where they'll go away, and you need to let them go.
And it includes...
You need to release them. You need to allow them to go. It includes even
close family, mothers, fathers. It includes children. It includes people in your life who you think that you'll never, ever be away from.
Yeah. This is an extremely delicate part of the process that it's really, really challenging to advise anyone on what to do. But for us, we trusted the process, And we just trusted that the people that no longer were in our vibrational match, they fell away. And we trusted that we're also honoring them by letting them go, right? Because their soul is not prepared to go in the direction that you are going in. And not that you're going in a better direction or anything. It's just everyone has their process, and they have to go through what they have to go through for their soul to learn the lessons that it needs to learn and have the contrast and experience that the soul wants to have. And so they go their way, you go your way, and you're much happier for it. So the more you accept the reality of that, when your vibration starts to raise, there will be people that will fade and vibrate out of your life because they're just not a vibrational match. And like Denny said, nature abhors a vacuum. And so when people fade out of your life and vibrate out of your life, then new people will come in inevitably. And your life will be rich and full.
Because it's this point that you start to learn words like
vibrational
authenticity, authenticity, vibrational match, allowing,
integrity.
Because you begin to become this more authentic person than you were before, because you are starting to speak your actual truth.
Absolutely.
And so you're speaking authenticity. So if you stand in that power and allow these things to happen, they will naturally just vibrate out of your life. It's difficult sometimes, and we hang on to things, and that will prolong the process if we show that resistance. But this is when you begin to understand how things just move, ebb and flow out of your life. It doesn't mean they're gone forever. It means they're gonna just set aside for a minute.
Yeah, and it'll be a natural response that you're gonna want everyone to know the good news.
Oh yeah.
That's part of this process. It's one of the symptoms of this phase, is wanting everyone to understand the truth that you have now discovered. And those that don't get it, it brings about a frustration and even an anger for you. I know we experienced that when we first started to spiritually awaken, but we also experienced that when we first became vegan. We didn't understand, like, how does the world not know that this is polluting the world and that we're killing the planet and that it's horrible for your bodies and all these things. And it created this almost anger and this frustration of, why are these people not getting it? And we had to realize, oh my gosh, just like 6 months ago, we didn't get it.
Right.
So there's this humility that comes along with spiritual awakening, that you just have grace for others just as they have had grace for you when you were asleep and not awakened to the truth.
Right, but you also begin to understand that everybody truly creates their own reality. And although our reality is, I look at veganism as a good example, I look at that and I say, how could I have ever not known this?
Right.
Even when I knew this, I still did what I did.
Right.
But now that's my reality. But it doesn't mean it's your reality. It may not ever be your reality. It doesn't mean that you are not awakened. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that that's the reality that you've created.
Doesn't mean you're more spiritually enlightened or any of that stuff. Right.
It just means that you've created this reality, and this is the reality that I've created. And that's the beautiful part about this, is we can share our realities with each other. We don't have to be like each other. We can just share our lives with each other.
And learn and grow and evolve. It's all about unity. It's all about unity.
And this is when you begin to learn that.
Yep.
Even though there's conflict or contrast. Contrast is a good way to put it. Because that's ultimately what helps us grow and heal and evolve, is contrast. And so you grow and you heal, you evolve, and then you move right into...
And the reality is just be who you are. The more you are who you are, you never know. Even those people that are pushing against your beliefs, they may be secretly integrating those energies and having their own process. And in a couple of months, you may hear them say, holy cow, I actually am adopting some of your principles and I actually understand where you're coming from. You just never know who you're influencing. So don't be so quick to get upset with somebody that doesn't get it right away, because they may be actually just processing it on their own time. And before you know it, you have another person in your circle that is helping raise the vibration right along with you.
Because understand that probably 10 years prior to this, you ran into some weirdo who was talking like you are now, and you thought they were nuts, and you just kept on walking.
Yep.
And that's just how it is. You're not a vibrational match.
You don't hear it, you don't see it. So you cannot expect other people to hear it and see it the way you do.
Right.
So we just have to co-create.
So after this contrast moves us into integration.
Yeah. So now we're in the acceptance phase. We're into...
Not acceptance yet, integration.
Oh, yeah. So you're in... Oh, we didn't do integration yet?
No, you begin.
You
begin to integrate.
So number 4.
They sort of go hand in hand, because you're beginning to step into your truth.
Yes.
Find your authenticity. Find your own integrity, and then you begin to integrate it into your new life. This new life may be without a few people that were in it before, with some new ones, but you begin to integrate yourself. And this right here, I believe, is a place where many people get stuck for a very long time, because they have this new
This is the place where you feel like you can be this way when you're talking to your friends on the internet or your like-minded friends, but when you go to work, you have to be a different person. Or when you're interacting at the grocery store, you have to use different words. You're afraid to talk about vibration or law of attraction or whatever. So this is that phase where it's just like you're integrating the energies and you're getting yourself prepared to sort of come out and show who you are to the world. And that part is so scary.
It's
very
so
scary to like really live who you are.
Especially when it's within your own household.
This is where you have different Facebooks. This phase is where you still, if you have, you know, a Facebook that is your spiritual Facebook and a Facebook that's just your friends or whatever, or your family and friends from the past, this is the phase that you're in. You're integrating those energies.
If you've done a live stream in a closet, this is that phase.
If you're only talking to your spiritual friends in privacy, you have different email accounts, you have different whatever, so that your spouse doesn't know what you're doing, all that stuff. This is the phase that you're in. You're in this integration phase where your authenticity is private. It's like private authenticity, if that's a thing. You're really trying to keep, because you're protecting it. You don't want anyone to burst your bubble. You don't want anyone to be negative about this amazing gift that you found. And so you're kind of protecting it, really. That's really a better, more positive way to look at it, I guess.
Well, higher vibration. You know, a really good way to look at it is that this, like with Jesus. Let's talk about Jesus for a minute. He's, you know, we all like Jesus,
Yeshua.
right? A good way to talk about him, to bring him into this conversation, is that when he would heal people, he would heal them and say, now go and tell no one of this. Why? Why can't I go tell people? Because the way we work is that when we go and tell somebody, hey, this guy Jesus, he just healed me, they'll be like, he's full of it. The moment you hear that, your brain says, wait a minute. It's the same mechanism that says, I have this great idea for a book, or I have this great idea for a vlog, or I have a great idea.
We're going to be YouTubers.
It's the one that says, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You're not good looking enough. You're not funny enough. You're not smart enough. You don't have enough money. It's that same mechanism that says, well, maybe he didn't heal me. Maybe. So you start to learn all these new things. And the second you go and tell somebody, you're afraid they're going to say, no, that's all BS. Don't listen to that crap.
Yes.
And it's devastating because you've already been devastated once with the stuff that you had to unlearn or forget. Now you've got this new stuff that you love and it makes you feel good. It's devastating when people say, nah, I don't, you know. So you do keep it secret. But you slowly start to integrate this into your life.
As you step more and more into your power, you start to integrate it. Your vibration raises to a place where you just can't contain it anymore. This is who I am. I'm showing the world. I'm done with this. I'm over it. Hear me roar. This is me. And so that is your integration period. Then once you get out of the integration period, you step into the acceptance period. And that's it. It eases right in there. And that's not to say that, so number 5 is acceptance. That's not to say that all of these stages don't bleed into one another.
Oh, they do.
And that you don't fall back into the soul hunger phase, or that you don't fall back into the external conflict. I still have external conflict here and there. And I'm in initiation for shamanic initiation, and I still find myself in this external conflict every now and then.
Right, but always understand that when you're actually falling forward. You're not falling back, because these go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But just like anything else, there is no linear time. There is no linear way to look at this.
That's a good point.
So if you are all of a sudden accepting it and you find yourself waking up to these new truths, you're like, what the hell is this going on?
There is levels.
You're not going
to
back.
Your consciousness.
Sure. You're not going back to number 1. You're falling forward into this new experience.
That's such a good point, because I think you get defeated when you're on the spiritual path. I think that anytime you're on some new spiritual path, the question always comes up when you fall into a new habit, when you fall into an old programming, an old behavior, you say, oh my gosh, I thought I was past that. I thought I had evolved past this behavior. And the reality is that there's layers to that, because we're not just dealing with this lifetime, we're also dealing with past lives. This is deep in our cellular level. It's ingrained in our DNA, and that's a whole nother YouTube video that we will promise to give you. But this is just your basic spiritual awakening process. But there is definitely layers and layers and layers. And as you reach new levels of consciousness, you'll almost go through these stages all over again and all over again. And then you finally do get to a point where you're like, you become the observer of your life, and you realize that I'm not going backwards. I'm not falling backwards. I'm falling forward. I'm not back in old behaviors. I'm just reached a new level, a new layer of that behavior. Because all behavior is pain and coping, right? Habits and behaviors are pain and coping. And so you have to get underneath those layers. And then you get into the chakra system and how you revisit each chakra every 7 years. And that's a whole nother video too. So there's layers to these. So don't beat yourself up if you feel like you're falling in any sort of category or you're not where you should be. That's actually one of the symptoms of the internal conflict, is feeling as if you should be farther along than you are and all that kind of stuff. But number 5 would be acceptance. Accepting where you are, accepting that you've had this spiritual awakening, that there's people around you that aren't going to accept it, that you're having this internal conflict, that your soul is hungry for more information, and you've reached this acceptance. This is now where you are, and then you start your ascension process. Then ascension can fully begin because you have opened yourself up to new downloads. You've opened yourself up where you couldn't be downloaded before, right? Because you were so closed off. You couldn't receive upgrades. Your vibration couldn't rise. Your kundalini couldn't rise. Nothing could happen because you were so closed off to it. Now you've gone through this spiritual awakening and you're now open and ready, and the universe is now delivering and pouring these downloads into you, these upgrades into you. So ascension begins. And that will be our next video.
Absolutely.
Are we good?
I think we're good.
I think we're good. So thanks for watching. We really appreciate your support on this YouTube channel that we've just started. So please feel free to subscribe if you feel like you can resonate with our messages. Also feel like if you feel like sharing, please share.
And comment. We always welcome comments below.
Absolutely. Comment, ask questions.
And reach out to us if you ever need anything, have any questions, or want to talk or whatever.
Yes, we have our links to our Facebook pages. We have a wonderful community on Facebook that you're welcome to join, and as well as our business page will be linked below. Yep. So thank you.
We always want to remind you every single day, ask yourself, how can it get any better than this?
That is our catchphrase.
Always.
How can it get any better than this?
Always ask
If you
yourself
ask yourself that question, the universe will obviously deliver you an answer to that, and then you keep asking that question and your life just gets better and better and better.
Yep.
We love you.
Thank you, everybody. Love you.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.